Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name's Ivana Harenque if you're new here, and if you're not, thank you for coming back. Today is almost at Thursday. Today is Wednesday, June the 29th. Week is getting away from me already. And today I am joined by AL.com columnist Kyle Whitmire. And Kyle is here today to talk about an award that the city of Huntsville and the Huntsville Police Department has received. And it's not exactly one that they probably wanted to receive. Actually, nobody's even picked up the award yet. So Kyle, before we get into some of the details here, tell us a little bit about this award and who presented it and why the city actually received it.
So the award came from the Investigative Reporters and Editors Association. They're a national organization made up of people like me and some of our colleagues, and they have thousands of members across the country and even members in other countries. And each year, they do what we journalists do. They have an awards banquet, and they have give out awards for some of the best content that we've produced in the last year. But there's this one that sort of runs against the grain. That's the Golden Padlock, which investigative reporters and editors nominate. Sort of the if you hear my dog snoring, I'm very sorry right now. Investigate some of the worst public record scofflaws in the country. These are public officials and local and state and city governments and even federal agencies that try to block access to what should otherwise be public information. And a lot of people enter their problem cases into this contest each year, and this year one rose above the rest.
And not necessarily the foam rising for the best in this award. I mean, you can say that it was the best, but it's not necessarily an award that people covet, right? This is
I like to call it a distinction. It's not really an award. It's not something you want to win. It's a distinction.
And Huntsville took home that distinction. It's almost like what they used to do was it the Razzies, right? For movies. This is kind of a similar situation here. So Huntsville actually took home that. They got called out for this Golden Padlock Award. And the Golden Padlock Award was specifically given to Huntsville because of the issue in the case, rather, we can say, of former officer now, William Ben Darby, who was convicted of murder last year for murdering a man who called police with asking for help because he was suicidal at the time. Ben Darby then shot this man and killed him. And then last year he was convicted on murder charges. But in the span of when Jeffrey Parker was killed through until last year, 2021, when Ben Darby was convicted of that murder, the city stood by him. And even since, many members of the city have stood by Ben Darby. And that is where this Golden Padlock Award stems from, specifically the body camera footage of that incident. So, Kyle, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, Ashley Remkus and Challen Stevens, two of our colleagues, tried repeatedly through this process from after the shooting happened all the way through the trial to get this body cam footage. And the city just has refused to release it. They've refused to release any other body cam footage. And, one of the things I did, and sort of my little piece of this thing, I just went back and I looked at what Mayor Tommy Battle said when the city bought these body cameras. Because if you sort of roll the tape back, 5 or 6 years, and you listen to what police departments were saying these body cameras were for when they were a new thing. What they said, things similar to, all over, police departments all over said similar things to what Tommy Battle said, which is like, these things are going to be great. 99.9% of disputes over, accusations of police misconduct, these things will clear us. And he even said, if there's ever a dispute, we won't have a problem once we have these cameras, because you'll just be able to go to the police department, pull the footage, look at the footage, see what it shows, everybody can see it, and then everyone will have trust. These things were made or were intended to create public trust by creating transparency. And none of that happened, right? The city spent over $1 million for all these cameras, and all the officers have them. And anytime there's been any kind of dispute, not just in this case, but in others, including others where, there were other people on the scenes with their cell phone cameras out, filming what happened. The police department and City Hall have refused to turn over these tapes. What was peculiar about this case? First, the city of Huntsville, their police department cleared Officer Darby, said he did nothing wrong. But the local district attorney's office looked at these tapes. They can't keep them away from them. They saw it. They went, this needs to go before a grand jury. They took it before a grand jury. Grand jury saw it, said this needs to go to trial. And it went to trial, and the jury there said this man needs to go to prison. And it was obvious to everyone else who watched these tapes that something wrong had happened here, except for the Huntsville Police Department and Huntsville City Hall. And remember, throughout this process, the city of Huntsville paid over $125,000 taxpayer dollars, toward this police officer's defense. They would use money out of taxpayers' pockets to pay for his defense, but they would not show those taxpayers video of what actually happened. And some of the city council members even said at the time that they had not seen video of this when they approved that money being spent for that. So, I mean, it has been a long process, but what ultimately happens after the trial, where these tapes were entered into evidence, our colleagues went to the judge and said, hey, this was evidence in open court. Everything is pretty much decided now. Shouldn't these be public just like every other piece of evidence in the court file? And the city even then fought to keep those records under seal. The judge disagreed. The judge saw the public value in this and decided that this needed to be made public. And that's the only reason we ever got to see this, was because the judge intervened on the public's behalf.
Well, and it's interesting too that there was even an argument after those tapes were shown in open court as to if they should be released, because it's exactly open court, right? This was a trial like most trials are, where the public can come watch. Anybody can come in the courthouse. Anybody can go into the courtroom, sit down and watch. Now, you might not be able to take pictures with your cell phone, record anything in there, but you can go and watch. And that is the public part of this trial. So again, with those videos being shown in open court for anybody to walk off the street and see, right, for the city then to say, well, we don't want them out in the press. We don't want them distributed on the internet. That is an interesting dilemma there. And again, the judge, as you mentioned, ultimately said, no, these were shown in open court. These were public records. But Kyle, what do you think the purpose of that was? Or what do you think the argument there was from the city to say, sure, we'll show it in open court, but we don't want it getting out anywhere else?
Well, I don't think they had a choice of whether to show it in open court. That was the county prosecutors that made that decision. And, they didn't want the public to see this because it made them look bad. And what that video shows, and I'll just tell you so that folks don't have, if you choose not to watch it, that's completely understandable, because it is gruesome and it's bad. But Officer Darby runs up to this house where a man named Jeff Parker he was suicidal. He'd called the police department. There were already 2 police officers there in the doorway of this house. One, Officer Begis, was talking very calmly to Mr. Parker, and doing the sort of things that the public kind of expects police officers to do in these sorts of situations, to try to de-escalate things. She's asking him questions, asking him if he's on any sort of substances, any drugs or anything like that. Trying to tell him, encourage him, don't do anything stupid. We don't want to see you get hurt. And that's when Officer Darby more or less pushes her out of the way, like butts into the thing where she already had pretty much control of the situation, points a shotgun at the man, tells him, put down the gun. And then within about 10 seconds of having barged into this man's house, shoots him in the face. And he testified that he shot him because he saw the gun move. Now, I don't know how you put down a gun without moving a gun, but regardless, it was clear you had at least two police officers there who were trying to de-escalate things, to handle things calmly. Those police officers were reprimanded for having not followed department policy and good police work, because they were trying to de-escalate the situation. And the police department declared this a good shooting. And I think they had hoped that that was as far as it would go, that no one else would question, no one else would look at this evidence. And once they had made that call, once the police department had said that nothing wrong had happened here on Darby's part, they couldn't back out of that. They couldn't say, "Oh, okay, yeah, maybe there was." They including after the verdict, the police chief, now former police chief McMurray, and Tommy Battle, both after the verdict said, "We disagree with this verdict, and we think our police officer did nothing wrong."
Well, and again, this Golden Padlock Award that the IRE gave to Huntsville, there were a lot of people who were up for this distinction for a lot of really important things that need to be discussed. And I know that the communities where each of these things are happening nationwide are talking about them, but none of them are good, right, Kyle? This was a race between some very questionable practices. There was one police department that was a finalist there that essentially lost several hundred people on parole, some for violent offenses.
Yeah, including murderers and rapists were just wandering off, and their probation office was not keeping up with them. There's another instance where the FDA was asked for data on the vaccines that they were supposed to be approving in the last year, and they agreed to release that data at a pace of, I think it was like 50 pages per day, or maybe it's 500. Regardless, it was going to take 50 years for them to release all of this data at the pace that they were saying they were going to do it. Judge told them no. There's a case in North Carolina of a university that was caught by its own journalism department spying on members of its journalism department because they were asking difficult questions of the university there. There's never a shortage of scofflaws nationally for this award, and the presenter, and it's always a little bit tongue in cheek at this thing, said that once again, I think this is the 9th year that they have presented this award. Every year they invite the winners to come accept it, and for the 9th year in a row, nobody showed up to take home the prize. It's a nice little trophy. I went and picked it up. It's pretty heavy. It's this big padlock about that big with these two little chains that come down on either sides, and but it's kind of dusty. It's kind of if you've ever left your bike in the tool shed in your shed too long, how it gets that kind of greasy, dusty stuff all over it. It's kind of dirty.
Well, and
the activity, kind of like the behavior it rewards or awards.
Kyle, there are so many again of these instances that were up as finalists for this award, and again, all of them questionable. So, why did IRE choose Huntsville? Why was that the worst display of these secrecy laws and just the hiding, rather, I should say, from the public?
Well, the presenter read what each of the finalists had done to the crowd there. There were about 1,400 people in this huge ballroom where the ceremony took place. And I think that entry was the only one where I heard people audibly gasp or murmur under their breath when he described what the city of Huntsville had done. And he didn't even say anything. He just sort of glossed over in a probably about 30-second time span, like just the bare facts of the case. But police department shouldn't cover up murders. They shouldn't cover up murders especially when the murderer is someone on their police force. And that's basically what happened here. The city of Huntsville tried to cover up a murder. And that grabs people. It shocks people. I've had people who have written me who said, normally I don't agree with the word that you say, but this offends me. This disgusts me. This needs to change.
Kyle, has Mayor Tommy Battle of Huntsville or anybody from the Huntsville Police Department made any type of comment recently about this? Again, this has been a situation that's been going on for several years at this point. But have they made any comments to this association saying that they behaved inappropriately?
I don't know that they said they replied at all to IRE. I think they said all that they were going to say after the verdict, and they just still could not admit what everybody else who saw this footage could see with their own eyes. And in the end, the ironic twist here is that this body cam footage did exactly uh, it did exactly what Tommy Battle said it would do years ago when the city bought those cameras. It allowed the public to see exactly what happened. It just did not have the intended result that Battle and the police department there had hoped for when they bought these cameras.
Sounds like this is probably a trophy that they're not going to be picking up anytime soon, Kyle.
No. And I should add one more thing. And this is unfortunate, but not long after those tapes became public, after the court ordered them released, the Alabama Supreme Court, in another case, separate case, unrelated to this one, ruled that body cam footage is not a public record, and that essentially police departments could not be compelled to turn over those records just as you would any other public document. Only one justice, Tom Parker, dissented. I don't agree with Tom Parker on a lot of things, and kind of think that the day that Parker is the voice of reason is a troubling day. But yeah, they've now shut the door on the truth coming out like this ever again.
That is an issue I'm sure you're going to stay up with on AL.com, Kyle. I know that that's one you're not going to be letting go of anytime soon. So
Yeah.
thank you for giving us a little bit of a look at this latest award again that Huntsville's received here. And again, one that they're probably not going to pick up anytime soon, at least. Kyle, thank you. We're going to leave your column here about the Golden Padlock Award and more about Officer Darby, former Officer Darby, and his murder conviction for killing Jeff Parker several years ago as well. You have all that information in your column. We're going to leave that link here if anybody is interested in that. So thank you for your time again, Kyle. Everybody watching, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.